Chapter 4. Port Royal, the Lion's Den. Part 1. The horizon bled crimson as the revenant tide limped toward Port Royal. The once proud harbor of the Caribbean glimmered like a jewel. Though William mad-eyed, Williams knew better. From a distance it was paradise. Closer, it stank of salt, smoke, and sin. The city clung to the narrow spit of sand like a barnacle, its crooked streets crammed with taverns, counting houses, and gallows. Ships of every flag bobbed in the harbor. Dutch, French, English, and those that flew no banner at all. Home sweet hell, Islam murmured beside him. Her tricorn shadowed her face as she studied the skyline. Never thought we'd see her again. William's single good eye gleamed beneath his scar. Nor I, but there's ghosts yet to wake here. Beneath his glove, the shard of relic burned faintly against his palm. Each league they drew closer. The hum grew stronger. Something beneath the city answered it. The crew moved in silence, their sails half-furled. The tide now bore false colors, red and gold, the livery of a sugar merchant out of Havana. Her cannons were covered with tarps, her name crudely repainted, La Fortuna. They glided past the British frigate HMS Perseverance, whose watchman barely glanced at them. A bribe delivered days earlier through a neutral intermediary had ensured an easy docking. "Let's hope your coin buys as much silence as you promised," Islam muttered. "It'll hold," Williams said. "Long enough for us to do what we came for." Aye, the harbor of gold and rot. The dockhands of Port Royal were a breed apart. Sailors, smugglers, and thieves in equal measure. As La Fortuna eased alongside the wharf, they swarmed aboard with ropes and hooks, shouting in a dozen tongues. The air was thick with the stench of tar and rum. William descended to the gangplank, every inch the weary merchant. His coat had been scrubbed clean, his hat replaced with a broad-brimmed trader style. Even his weapons were hidden beneath the folds of cloth. A harbor master approached, fat, powdered, sweating through his wig. "Name and business?" he wheezed. "Captain William Hawke," William lied smoothly. "Merchant from Havana. Our cargo suffered in a storm off Cartagena. We seek repairs and trade." The man eyed him suspiciously. "Storm, you say? Odd. The sea's been calm as a nun's conscience all week." William smiled, all teeth. "Then perhaps it was divine punishment for my sins." The harbor master laughed uncertainly, accepted a pouch of silver, and waved them through. "Welcome to Port Royal, Captain Hawke. Keep your men in line. The governor's fond of hand-in strangers." William tipped his hat. "Then best we don't stay strangers long." 2. The city of crowns and corpses. Port Royal had grown fat on greed. Golden coins clinked in every hand, blood dripped in every gutter. The streets were a riot of perfume and decay. Ladies in satin brushing past beggars, redcoats drinking with privateers, preachers shouting damnation to men too drunk to listen. William and Islam moved through the chaos, cloaked and unremarkable. Two of their crew, Finch and Briggs, followed a few paces behind carrying crates that concealed pistols and powder. "Place hasn't changed," Isla said, scanning the crowded market. "Still smells of sweat and betrayal." William's gaze lingered on a gallows rising over the square. 3 bodies swayed gently in the breeze. One bore a sign reading pirate. Another, traitor. The third simply read unknown. His jaw tightened. "Aye," he murmured. "Still home." They reached the Mariner's Rest, a seedy tavern near the harbor wall where information flowed freer than rum. Inside, the air was thick with smoke and laughter. A fiddler played off-key in the corner while a woman in red danced atop a table, kicking over tankards. William scanned the crowd until he found the man they sought, Jonas Merrick, once a smuggler under Vane's command, now a broker for the East India Company. His smile was as false as his teeth. "Well, I'll be damned," Merrick said as William and Isla approached. "If it isn't the ghost of mad-eyed Williams. Where was you gone to feed the crabs?" "Rumors exaggerate," Williams said, sliding into the booth opposite. "I need information." Merrick chuckled. "Information costs more than resurrection, my friend." William dropped a gold doubloon on the table. "Then call this a miracle." Merrick's eyes glittered. What is it you're after? A woman. Named Scarlet. Taken by the East India Company 6 months ago. Where is she? Merrick's smile faltered. Ah, her. Dangerous name to speak, that one. She's held in Fort Charles Dungeon, under Commodore Thorne's orders. No one goes in or out without his mark. Then I'll get his mark, William said. Merrick laughed. You're mad. Isla leaned forward, her dagger pricking his sleeve. You've no idea. Merrick swallowed. All right. There's a supply barge delivering prisoners tonight. If you've coin and luck, you might slip a man inside. But you didn't hear it from me. William stood. You've always been wise, Jonas. Stay that way. 3. The weight of ghosts. Night draped itself over Port Royal like a funeral shroud. The moon hung low, swollen and red, staining the harbor with light the color of blood. On the docks, the tide's crew prepared. Weapons checked, powder dry, blades glinting under tarps. Isla adjusted her coat, eyes on the fortress that loomed over the city. Fort Charles. Never thought we'd be breaking into a prison. William loaded his pistol. Life's full of ironies. Or curses. He said nothing. The shard burned hotter now, pulsing with every heartbeat. The air itself felt heavy, as though the sea were holding its breath. They moved under cover of fog, slipping aboard the prisoner barge anchored near the outer wall. Crates shifted as they hit among them, the scent of mildew and chain oil filling the hold. When the gates opened, the barge drifted inside the fortress harbor. The sound of boots echoed above, soldiers bored and drunk. One muttered about the full moon making men mad. Another spat into the water. Through a crack in the crate, William glimpsed the courtyard beyond. Rows of cells lit by torchlight, the air shimmering with heat and fear. Scarlet was somewhere in there. He could feel it, the same pull that had drawn him across seas and storms. Isla touched his arm. When we get her, what then? He met her gaze. Then we run, and never stop. 4. The heart beneath the stone. They slipped from the barge as guards changed posts. The tunnels beneath the fort were narrow, slick with moss. The air reeked of salt and iron. Each step echoed like a drumbeat. William led the way, the shard glowing faintly through his glove. Strange carvings lined the walls, spirals and waves, the same marks from the island temple. Same symbols, Isla whispered. What's it mean? That the sea's debt runs deeper than any dungeon, William murmured. They reached the inner hall. Torchlight flickered on iron doors. Moans drifted through the stones. A figure slumped in one cell, a gaunt prisoner, eyes wide. Turn back, he croaked. It's awake. William froze. What is? The man pointed toward the lower levels. The heart, the tide beneath the tide. Before William could ask more, a bell clanged above. The sound rolled through the corridors, alarms. The door behind them slammed shut. Isla Kerst. We've been found. William drew his cutlass. Then let's make him earn it. Ve Tornis Shadow. Footsteps thundered in the passage. Redcoats poured in with muskets raised. William's pistol barked once, dropping the first man. Isla hurled a knife into the throat of another. Smoke filled the air. The fight became chaos, steel, screams, and the stink of powder. William kicked open a side door, dragging Isla through. They stumbled into a chamber lined with maps and charts. A great banner hung above the desk, East India Trading Company, and behind the desk stood Commodore Erasmus Thorne. He was tall, his uniform immaculate, his hair powdered white. Only his eyes betrayed him, cold and burning with fanatic purpose. So, Thorne said softly, the ghost walks. William raised his blade. You've something of mine. Thorne smiled. You mean the woman? Ah, yes, Scarlet. She was remarkable. She's not here. William's heart stopped. What did you do? She was taken to the lower chambers. The sea wanted her back. Thorne's gaze flicked to William's hand. And now it wants you. He drew a pistol and fired. The ball tore through William's shoulder, spinning him back. Isla screamed his name as guards burst in. She shot 2 before the rest overwhelmed them. Thorne approached, expression calm. Bind them. The governor will want to see this one swing at dawn. William's vision blurred. The last thing he saw before the darkness took him was Thorne's hand closing around the relic's glow in his palm, and the faint whisper of the sea rising in anger. Chapter 4. Port Royal, The Lion's Den, Part 2. The world swayed like a ship caught in a squall. William awoke to the taste of blood and salt, his hands chained above him, his shoulder burning where the musket ball had torn through. The cell was little more than stone and shadow. Water dripped from the ceiling, each drop echoing like a clock counting down his life. He tugged once at the manacles, iron bit into flesh. Outside, thunder rolled, or perhaps it was cannon fire. Isla hung opposite him, bruised but alive. Her eyes flicked open. Still breathing. Captain? Barely, he rasped. Where are we? She spat blood. Under the fort. Smells like the devil's privy. A sound drifted from deeper in the darkness, a slow, rhythmic hum. It wasn't human. It pulsed like a heartbeat beneath the stone. William's head lifted. The shard burned faintly where Thorne's bullet had grazed it. He could feel it. Something below, something ancient calling. Isla noticed his stare. That thing again, she muttered. You still think it's just a trinket? Not anymore. Footsteps approached. 2 guards entered, dragging torches. Behind them came Commodore Thorne, immaculate as ever, though sweat now beaded his temples. He carried the relic in his gloved hand, the glow pulsing like a heartbeat. It hums, Thorne said softly, almost reverently, as if it knows me. Or perhaps it fears you. Williams said nothing. The Commodore paced before him. You're a curious man, Williams. You survived the company's gallows, crossed half the Caribbean, and returned to Port Royal like a specter. All for a woman. Romantic but foolish. Where is she? William growled. Thorne smiled thinly. Below, where she belongs. She serves a greater purpose now. The company has discovered a power older than crowns, older than your precious sea. And you, pirate, are going to help me control it. He stepped close, holding up the relic. This shard was dredged from the ruins of the Abyssal Temple. The same ruins you desecrated on the Isle of Lost Souls. We know what it opens. Then you're madder than I am. William spat. Perhaps, Thorne said, but I will be remembered. He turned to his men. Bring them to the depths. The tide comes tonight. Aye, the depths beneath the fortress. They were dragged down a spiral stair that sank into the belly of the fort, past cells and storerooms, and ancient stone older than the colony itself. The air grew colder, damper. The hum beneath the earth became a roar. They reached a cavern carved by water, a great black pool shimmering under torchlight. Chains dangled from the ceiling. Symbols like those from the island temple were etched into the walls. In the center, upon a stone altar, lay Scarlet. Her hair spilled across the slab like fire. She was pale but breathing, her wrists bound by silver fetters that glowed faintly with the same energy as the shard. A circle of East India officers surrounded her, chanting in low Latin tones. Thorne raised the relic high. By the power of the abyss, by the covenant of the deep, awaken. The pool rippled. A wind tore through the cavern, though no door stood open. The torches bent inward, drawn toward the water. William strained against his chains, rage and horror twisting inside him. Thorne, let her go. The Commodore turned, smiling like a priest before a god. She is the key. Her blood carries the mark, the same mark that called you back to her. He slammed the relic into the altar. Light erupted, blue, blinding alive. The walls shook. The sea roared from beneath, ancient and furious. The chanting broke into screams. One of the officers was lifted from the ground, his flesh blackening, veins glowing like molten gold. He shrieked and burst into mist. The relic cracked. The light turned red, and then the world exploded. 2. The awakening. When the smoke cleared, half the chamber was gone. Water poured through fissures in the rock, flooding the floor. Scarlet gasped awake, the glow fading from her eyes. Thorne staggered, blood trickling from his ears. The relic still pulsed in his grasp, but weaker now, unstable. Hold them, he shouted. But his men were already fleeing, slipping on wet stone, the tide swallowing their boots. William wrenched against his chains until his wrists bled. The iron glowed red, then snapped. He stared at his hands, half in disbelief. The shard's glow had transferred to him. "Isla!" he shouted. She looked up wide-eyed. "Captain!" With a crack of thunder, the chains binding her split as well. The air shimmered around them, salt mist and ghost light swirling as if the ocean itself were bleeding through the cracks of the world. "Grab her!" William roared. He leapt across the flooding floor to Scarlet, catching her as she sagged from the altar. Her eyes fluttered open. "Will," she whispered weakly. "You came. I love. I always do." Behind them, Thorne screamed in fury. "You don't understand what you've done. You've doomed us all." He fired his pistol. The shot grazed Scarlet's arm. William turned, eyes burning like the sea at dawn. He moved before thought, faster than he ever had. His cutlass met Thorne's sword with a sound like thunder. Sparks flew. "You took everything from me," William snarled. Thorne's face twisted. "I gave you purpose." Their blades clashed again and again, water rising around them. The relic's light flared between their strikes. At last, William drove his sword through Thorne's chest, pinning him to the altar. The Commodore gasped, staring at the relic in his hand. "The tide will rise." Then he fell, sinking beneath the water as the chamber began to collapse. 3. Fire and salt. They ran. The tunnels shuddered around them, seawater bursting through the cracks. The fortress above groaned as if alive. Up the stairs, Isla shouted over the roar. Scarlet stumbled, clutching William's arm. "The city," she gasped. "He awakened something." William didn't look back. "Then we best not stay to see it." They burst into the lower barracks. Redcoats turned in shock as the fugitives appeared. William fired both pistols. 2 men fell. Isla cut down another. "Alarm! Pirates in the fort!" someone screamed. Beds hung. Muskets flared. The Revenant Tide's crew, waiting in the harbor, saw the flash of fire atop the fortress and answered with cannon. The first broadside struck the docks, shattering masts and throwing debris into the air. Port Royal erupted into chaos. William and his crew fought their way through the courtyard, the roar of battle behind them. Scarlet clung to Isla's shoulder, weak but alive. Every step they took, the ground trembled. The sea beyond the walls began to boil, waves rising unnaturally high. From the harbor, the tide's cannons thundered again, blasting open the fortress gates. Finch and Briggs charged through with a dozen pirates, smoke and powder turning night into day. "Captain," Briggs shouted, "we thought you were dead." "Close enough," William grunted. "Get her aboard." They sprinted through fire and ruin, the city collapsing behind them. A great roar echoed from the bay, a sound deeper than thunder, older than storms. William turned once. From a churning water, a colossal shape moved beneath the waves, vast and serpentine. Eyes like lanterns opened in the deep. The Leviathan, the legend whispered by sailors, the god of the drowned. It was awake. For the flight from Port Royal. They reached the dock as the first of the Leviathan's tentacles broke the surface, wrapping around a British frigate and dragging it under. The sea boiled red with fire and blood. "Cast off!" William roared as he leapt aboard the Revenant Tide. Isla took the helm. Sails loose. Guns ready. The ship lurched from the pier, catching the wind like a ghost freed from chains. Cannonballs screamed overhead. Flames lit the harbor, reflecting in the water like molten gold. William held Scarlet close as the tide slipped through the inferno. Her eyes fluttered open again. "Well, it's calling me." He shook his head. "Don't listen. You're safe now." She smiled faintly. "No one's safe from a sea." Behind them, Port Royal crumbled. The fortress sank into the bay, swallowed by the monster that had slept beneath its stones. The horizon split with lightning. The wind howled. William turned toward the storm, one hand gripping the wheel beside Isla. "We're not done, are we?" "Not by half," she said. He looked at the relic, now hanging from his neck on a torn cord. It pulsed once, faint and blue, as if the sea itself breathed through it. The Leviathan's roar rolled across the waves. The tide surged forward, sails blazing with ghost light, fleeing into the storm. And somewhere in the depths, the ocean whispered his name.